Nobody invites a stranger on stage at a sold-out concert. That's the rule. That's always been the rule. Insurance reasons, liability reasons, the simple practical reason that you never know what a stranger will do when you hand them a microphone in front of 20,000 people. Johnny Hallyday knew all of these reasons. He had known them for 40 years. And on this particular Thursday evening in June 1997 in Bordeaux, he decided that none of them applied. Bordeaux. June 1997. De Patinoire de Mériadeck. A converted ice rink turned concert venue that held 18,000 people when the floor was packed and the upper tiers were full, which they were this Thursday evening because Johnny Halliday's summer tour had sold out every date in 4 days and the Bordeaux show had sold out in 47 minutes specifically. The venue had that particular smell of converted industrial spaces, something metallic underneath the warmth of 18,000 bodies and the specific electricity of concert equipment running at full capacity. The summer evening light was still visible through the high windows at 7 o'clock when the doors opened, the long golden light of a June evening in the southwest of France that makes everything look slightly more beautiful and slightly more serious simultaneously. The show was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At 6:45, Johnny Hallyday was not in his dressing room going through his pre-show routine. He was outside. Not the backstage exit where the tour buses were parked and the security perimeter began. The front of the building, the public entrance. He was wearing a plain dark olive canvas jacket over a white linen shirt, dark navy jeans, brown leather boots, a grey wool cap pulled down, the appearance of a man who had stepped outside for air and happened to be standing near a concert venue on a Thursday evening. He did this sometimes, not often. But sometimes on the evening of a show, he needed to see the people before he saw the crowd. There was a difference. A crowd was what happened when 18,000 individuals stopped being individuals and became a single thing. That single thing was real and powerful and he loved it. But before the crowd, there were 18,000 individuals, each one with a reason for being there, a story attached to the ticket, a specific life that had led to this specific Thursday evening, outside this specific venue in Bordeaux. He liked to see a few of those before he became the person they had come to see. He was standing near a concrete pillar at the edge of the entrance plaza when he heard it. Not music exactly, a voice. A man's voice, low and slightly rough, singing something under his breath. Not performing, not even consciously singing in the way someone sings when they know they are singing. The kind of singing that happens when the body does something the mind has half forgotten it knows how to do. The way someone hums while working. Except this was not humming. This was something more formed than humming. Actual words, actual melody. A song that Johnny Hallyday recognized immediately because it was one of his own. An old one. From 1974. Not one that got played on the radio anymore. Not one that appeared on greatest hits compilations. A deep cut from an album that serious fans knew and casual fans had never encountered. He looked for the voice. The man was sitting on a low concrete wall at the edge of the entrance plaza. 60 years old approximately, heavy-set with broad shoulders that had once been powerful and now carried the particular settling of a man who worked physically for decades and has recently stopped. Grey hair cut short under a worn navy baseball cap. A face that had been outdoors for most of its life, tanned and lined with the particular honest weathering of someone who worked outside. He wore a light blue checked shirt, dark work trousers, heavy brown work boots. In his large hands a paper coffee cup from a nearby kiosk which he was turning slowly without drinking from. He was not waiting in the queue for the entrance. He was sitting apart from the queue watching it, the paper coffee cup turning in his hands, singing the 1974 song under his breath with the complete unself-consciousness of someone who does not know they are being heard. His name was Gilles Aumont. He was a retired mason from a small town called Langon 40 kilometers south of Bordeaux. He had driven to Bordeaux alone this evening because the ticket had been a birthday gift from his daughter Marie, who lived in Bordeaux, and who had bought it 6 months ago before his health situation had changed, and before the situation with his wife Colette had changed, and before the particular heaviness of this year had settled on him with a weight he was still learning to carry. He had almost not come. He had sat in his car in Langon for 20 minutes before deciding that Marie had bought the ticket and that not coming would be a way of saying that nothing was worth the effort anymore, and he was not ready to say that yet. So he drove to Bordeaux, arrived 2 hours early, got a coffee, sat on the wall, and without deciding to, began singing a song he had learned in 1974 and had not thought about consciously since approximately 1986. Johnny Hallyday walked toward him. He sat on the wall beside Gilles Aumont, not announcing himself, not making an entrance, simply sitting on a low concrete wall beside a man who was singing under his breath outside a concert venue on a Thursday evening. He kept his cap down. His olive canvas jacket and white linen shirt and dark navy jeans were completely ordinary. He was a man sitting on a wall. "Good song," he said. Gilles Aumont stopped singing immediately and looked sideways with the particular embarrassment of someone who has been caught doing something private. Then he registered the voice. Then the face under the grey cap. His own face did several things in rapid succession. Recognition, disbelief, the verification process, and then a kind of stillness that came after the verification when the disbelief had to be abandoned because the evidence was too direct. He said nothing for 3 seconds. Then he said, "You're him." Johnny Hallyday nodded. Simply, yes. Gilles Aumont looked at his paper coffee cup, then back at Johnny Hallyday, then at the queue forming at the entrance to the venue behind them, then back at Johnny Hallyday. "I wasn't going to come tonight," Gilles said. He said it without meaning to. The words arrived before the decision to say them. He said it the way people say true things to strangers when the circumstances have made normal social filtering temporarily unavailable. Johnny Hallyday looked at him. "What changed your mind?" he said. Gilles turned the paper cup in his hands. "My daughter bought the ticket." He paused. "It's been a difficult year." He did not elaborate. He did not need to elaborate. The weight of the year was audible in those 5 words, in a way that elaboration would have only diluted. Johnny Hallyday heard it. He sat with it for a moment, not rushing to fill it, not producing a reassuring response, simply sitting with it on a concrete wall in the June evening light of Bordeaux. "You knew all the words," Johnny Hallyday said after a moment. "That song. You knew every word." Gilles Aumont looked at him. "I bought that album in 1974, he said. Played it until the record wore out. My wife Colette used to say if I played that record one more time, she'd throw it out the window." He said this, and then his face did something brief and private. "She passed in February," he said quietly, 4 months ago. The silence between them on that concrete wall lasted approximately 15 seconds. Then Johnny Hallyday said, "Come inside with me." Gilles Aumont looked at him. "I have a ticket," he said. "I was going in." "Not that way," said Johnny Hallyday. "With me. Come backstage. Here is the first twist of this story. Gilles Aumont spent 2 hours backstage before the show, not as a spectacle, not as a trophy fan wheeled out for photographs. He sat in a corner of the backstage area on a folding chair with a real coffee, not a paper kiosk cup. An actual coffee in a ceramic mug brought by a member of the crew, and watched the organized reality of what happens before a concert. The sound check adjustments, the musicians warming up, the quiet, professional routines of the crew doing their final checks. Johnny Hallyday came and went in and out of hair and makeup and wardrobe, stopping each time he passed Gilles to exchange a few words about nothing in particular. The weather in Bordeaux, the drive from Langon, whether Gilles followed football. At 8:45, Johnny Hallyday sat down beside Gilles on a second folding chair and said something unexpected. "That song you were singing outside, do you know the second verse?" Gilles Aumont looked at him. "Yes," he said, "I know all of it." Johnny Hallyday nodded. "Your voice," he said, "when you were singing outside. Where did that come from?" Gilles looked at his hands. "I used to sing," he said. "Amateur choir in Langen for 12 years. Stopped in 2001 when work got too busy." He paused. "Colette used to say I had the best voice in the choir." He stopped talking. Johnny Hallyday was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want you to sing that song with me tonight. On stage. Here is the second twist." Gilles Aumont said no, not hesitantly, clearly and directly. No, with the absolute certainty of a 60-year-old retired mason from Langon who had driven to Bordeaux alone on a difficult Thursday evening and was not in any condition to stand in front of 18,000 people. Johnny Hallyday listened to the no. Then he said, "I'm not asking you to perform. I'm asking you to sing. There's a difference." Gilles looked at him. "What's the difference?" he said. "Performing is for the audience," said Johnny Hallyday. "Singing is for yourself. I'll be there. The band will be there. You'll just be singing a song you've known since 1974 for Colette. The 18,000 people will just happen to be in the same room." Gilles Aumont was quiet for a long time. The backstage sounds continued around them. Final equipment checks. The growing noise of the crowd filling the venue. The particular charged atmosphere of 9 minutes before a show begins. Then Jill said she would have laughed herself to pieces if she could see this. Johnny Hallyday said nothing. He waited. Jill looked at his large, work-worn hands. "All right," he said. "What happened at the Patinoire de Mériadeck at 10:47 that Thursday evening in June 1997 was witnessed by 18,000 people and has never been officially documented in any book or interview or documentary about Johnny Halliday's career." The show had been running for 1 hour and 47 minutes. Johnny Hallyday stopped between songs. He walked to the front of the stage. He spoke into the microphone without preamble. "I met someone outside this building tonight," he said. "He was sitting on a wall singing one of my songs. He knew every word. He has a voice that belongs on a stage, and he's had a difficult year. Tonight I'd like him to sing this song the way he sang it outside, for himself and for someone who isn't here." He turned and nodded toward the side of the stage. Gilles Aumont walked out, 60 years old, heavy-set, broad shoulders, grey hair under his worn navy baseball cap, light blue checked shirt, dark work trousers, heavy brown work boots, the appearance of a retired mason from a small town who had driven to Bordeaux alone on a Thursday evening and had almost not come. He walked to the center of the stage where a second microphone had been set up and stood beside Johnny Hallyday in front of 18,000 people with the particular stillness of someone who has decided something and is now inside the decision. The band played the opening bars of the 1974 song. Gilles Aumont closed his eyes and sang. The voice that came out of Jean Aumont at the Patinoire de Mériadeck that evening was not the voice of a nervous amateur on a stage too large for him. It was the voice of a man who had sung in an amateur choir for 12 years and had stopped in 2001 and had been carrying the song inside him without knowing it, and who was singing it now for a woman named Colette who had told him he had the best voice in the choir and who had passed in February 4 months ago. Johnny Hallyday sang beside him. Not over him, beside him. Harmonizing, supporting, making the space in the song wide enough for both of them. 18,000 people in a converted ice rink in Bordeaux on a Thursday evening in June were completely silent for 3 minutes and 40 seconds. Not the polite silence of an audience tolerating something unexpected, the rare, dense silence of 18,000 people who are in the presence of something real and know it and are choosing collectively to protect it by making no sound at all. When the song ended, Gilles Aumont opened his eyes. He looked out at 18,000 people who were no longer silent. The sound was enormous. He stood completely still in the middle of it, his large, work-worn hands at his sides, his worn navy baseball cap slightly crooked from where he had unconsciously tilted his head back while singing. His face was doing the thing that faces do when they have just been somewhere very private in a very public place and are coming back. Johnny Hallyday put his hand on Gilles Aumont's shoulder, left it there for 3 seconds, then leaned close to the microphone. "Gilles Almont," he said simply. "From Langon." Gilles drove back to Langon that night. He stopped on the way at a petrol station near Podensac, bought a coffee, sat in the car. The summer night was warm and still, and the sky south of Bordeaux had more stars than the city. He sat with his coffee and the window down for 20 minutes. His daughter Marie called at midnight. She had watched a video someone had posted from the concert. Shaky phone footage from the upper tier. The audio compressed and distorted but recognizable. She was crying before she could say his name properly. "Papa," she said. "Papa, I had no idea you could sing like that." He looked at the stars through the windscreen. "Your mother knew," he said. Johnny Hallyday never mentioned this evening in interviews. Not once. When journalists who had been in the venue asked him about it afterward, he said only that it had been a good night in Bordeaux. The video filmed by the person in the upper tier circulated among fans for years. Passed from hand to hand on cassette copies and later on early internet forums, always slightly degraded in quality. Always with the same shaky upper-tier perspective, always with the same 3 minutes and 40 seconds of 18,000 people being completely silent while a retired mason from Langon sang a 1974 song for his wife. Gilles Almont returned to the amateur choir in Langon in September 1997. He sang with them for 11 more years. He told the choir director on the first evening back, but he had remembered during the summer that he could still do it. The choir director asked what had reminded him. Gilles thought about it for a moment. "Someone was listening," he said. "And here is what this Thursday evening in June in Bordeaux leaves all of us. 18,000 people came to hear one man sing. They ended up hearing something else, not better or worse than what they came for. Different. The thing that happens when someone who has forgotten they can do something is reminded of it by someone who never forgot. Johnny Hallyday that evening was not a rock star making a generous gesture toward a fan. He was a man who sat on a concrete wall beside another man and heard something in a voice that was singing under its breath and understood exactly what it meant and knew what to do with it. He did not produce Gilles Almont. He did not manage him or promote him or give him a recording contract. He put a microphone at the right height and stood beside him and sang the harmony while Gilles sang the melody for a woman named Colette, who had said he had the best voice in the choir. That is all. That was everything. And have you ever stopped doing something you were good at because life got in the way? Or have you been the person who heard something in someone else that they had forgotten was there? Tell us in the comments. Because these are the stories that remind us that the things we carry silently are still alive in us, waiting for someone to sit down on a wall beside us and listen.